Why? Why did it work? Why did they win? The Valorant community can be very and the pro play community can be even more interesting. And one of the things that makes the least amount of sense to me is the general opinion on what makes a championship team. So today, as a fan, as someone trying to make a somewhat positive impact on this scene, let's have an open conversation about what specifically makes these teams champions. What separates them from the rest?
Send people here, they send people to work at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Greatest.
First things first, let's start with the obvious. As an outsider, I don't really know what goes on within these teams, so why not start with the things that we do know matter? The things that... no, I can't even say that with a straight face. The community does not get these right most of the time. Anyways, in my opinion, these three things are talent, structure, and roles. First of all, you need talent. You can't just throw 5 players in a good situation and expect them to succeed. They need to be talented enough to at any moment do some bullshit like this.
Now into the 3v3. This would be a back-breaking round to win here for Heretics to try to shut down G2 and Wood. He finds himself second. What is that?
The ability to have players that can pull around out of their ass is what makes good teams great. And as a viewer, probably one of the most appreciated abilities out there. Next things next, we have structure. Now, what do I mean by structure? Because let's be honest, the word itself is probably as vague as your promises are. Well, what I mean when I say structure, or what I imagine when I say structure, is the structure within the comps. Holy fuck, I gotta stop saying structure. The calling, the macros, the ability to fall back on something, it's something you would feel lost without. Now, structure doesn't necessarily need to be tight and rigid, it can be free-flowing, but it needs to be there. Finally, the last and obvious thing is roles. You can't just have a team with 4 duelists and expect it to work forever. Carmen Court. You need players comfortable within their roles. Now, that doesn't mean you can't transition players from one role to another. The best examples of this are people like Tens, people like Leaf, and, well, my personal favorite, Forsaken, who went from playing Duelist to the entire fucking Valorant roster. Regardless, the most important part of roles is to make sure each and every player is comfortable within their respective ones. Next, we'll talk about the not so obvious things. These things I feel like even still are not understood by the majority of this scene. We have luck, situation, and opportunity. I feel like this segment is a perfect opportunity to talk about the unfortunate and tragic tale of DRX. From all the way back in 2021 when they were still Vision Strikers, I feel like you could have looked at this team and seen that they had almost all the credentials at any point in time till about 2023 to be a championship team. However, it's 2024 and they haven't won anything. They've had 2.5 years, which in Valorant terms is like a lifetime. So why haven't they won anything? Well, let's take a look at their history at international events. In Masters Reykjavik 2022, DRX lost to Optic. Optic won Masters Reykjavik 2022. In the very next event in Masters Copenhagen, DRX lost to FPX. FPX won Masters Copenhagen 2022. In Champs 2022, DRX lost to Loud, DRX lost to Optic. The finals were Loud versus Optic. Moving on to the first event in 2023 Lock-In, DRX lost to Loud in a very, very close series. Loud choked Lock-In, but they were like 2 rounds away from winning for like 17 rounds or some bullshit like that. I'm gonna skip Tokyo just for their sake because I don't think anybody wants to remember that for them. However, in Champs 2023, DRX lost to EG, who ended up winning Champs 2023. You start to see a pattern here, don't you? Whether you think they choked or that they just got unlucky, one thing you can't deny is that maybe, just maybe if they were in a different situation, if they had slightly different circumstances, they would have won at least one. In my opinion, for the most part, they had everything else going for them. Now, this doesn't take away from the teams that did in fact win. You should actually see it as more impressive. A team like Fnatic is a perfect example of this. Fnatic are the only team in Valorant's short history to win back-to-back. And I attribute a huge chunk of that to them making their own luck, creating their own opportunity. They were the ones to make up meta comps on maps like Lotus. They always seemed ahead of everybody else. They found a way to be in control, and look what happened.
I'm just gonna stomp you, you're gonna keep coming back, I'm gonna seal up all my cracks, you're gonna keep coming.
The third thing that I'm going to talk about today, and something I've kind of been tiptoeing around this video so far, is chemistry. Or as we like to call it, vibes. The vibes. The goddamn vibes. It's the fucking vibes! It's kind of weird to talk about this simply because I feel like this subject has a divide. I feel like you're either someone who understands the importance of it, maybe you're even sick of hearing people talk about it so much, or you're someone who thought Energy was going to win it all last year. I'm sorry. That was too easy of a shot to take. Okay, so let me just talk about this because even with this divide, it's still a very important part of a championship team. You cannot win without chemistry. And I don't mean you have to be joking and buddies all the time, but vibes come in different shapes and sizes, just like you guys. The simplest way to understand why it's so important is the fact that you have to have a certain amount of chemistry to buy into your team. And you cannot win anything without buying into your team. Ideally, you want the chemistry in and out of the server, but at minimum, you need to be able to work off of each other in the server. It's not hard to understand, yet I still see so many people fall into this trap, like they did last year with NRG, however this year it's with Vitality. Do I think Vitality can win multiple Masters this year? Yes. Do I think they will? I don't know. I think talent-wise they have one of the most stacked rosters we've ever seen, but I don't know how that team's going to work. I don't know how players are going to mesh. Just because you got the players doesn't mean you'll get the wins. And with that being said, I think we can move on to the people who get the players, the reason they even end up on a team. Probably the weirdest and most interesting part of this discussion are the orgs themselves. You can say that you can't win without being on a good org. But then you look at what EG did in 2023 and that argument goes out the window. And if you don't know, EG is a notoriously bad org. But then you start to question how much the org actually has to do with it, and if it falls more on the coach. But then you realize that the org is responsible for hiring the coach, so you start to question if it's bad orgs that are too involved that are the issue, but maybe that's not it either. Maybe it's always been bad coaches, and then you get yourself in this spiral where the words contract jailers flash 100 times over everywhere you look, and then all of a sudden, it turns dark. And nothingness pours over every inch of your mind. Not a single thought penetrates the paint-like substance that is nothingness. Well, nothing. Except for C9. If there's one concrete example of an org getting in its own way, it's C9. And I'm definitely not saying that because of any recent examples or anything.
Okay, I seriously thought I was making a quesadilla. What the fuck is this?
Up to this point, there's been a lot of I thinks and you can argues, so I'm going to turn it to you. Yes, you, eating cereal at 2 a.m. watching this video. You lucky I'm not screaming. I have more of a heart than that one guy did. This video wasn't really meant to give you concrete answers. It was more meant for two main reasons. The first one was to start a general discussion. I don't have all the answers, you don't have all the answers, hell, even people in the scene don't have all the answers. However, I'm curious what you think. All opinions are welcomed, even the bad ones. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? What did I miss? And what do you think it takes to be able to win an event in this game? Tell me down below. And the second reason was to open people's eyes to things they may not have thought about before. Tell you what, I may not have gotten everything right, but I bet that I made you think about something you hadn't considered before. And even if I didn't, I bet that I at least made you think. Who's texting me? Who posted my nudes on Twitter.com?
Chairs lost broken on an open fire. Jack Frost nipping at your nose. Yuletide carols being sung while the cold bell froze. There's a light